You can, of course, as you know, you can join in this debate through Twitter. Our hashtag is BBCQT. We've got a Twitter panellist tonight called Full Fact. Full Fact is an organisation which specialises in fact-checking claims made by politicians and the media. So the panel had better watch out. Perhaps we should always have a full fact, checking what they say as we go along. And you can also, you can find them, by the way, on the BBC Extra Guest account, I think it is. Or you can text comments as you like to 83981, press the red button, you'll see what other people are saying. Let's have a question from Andrew Jardine, please.
With almost 3 million more foreign residents since 2001, is Britain no longer British?
3 million more foreign residents and 13% of people in Britain now born outside the UK. Is Britain no longer British? Karen Billamoria.
I came to this country as a 19-year-old from India to study. And this has been a most amazing country that's given me the opportunity to not only study, but to start up my business, to build a life over here. And what I've seen is a transformation of this country over the last 3 decades, from a country with a glass ceiling, where if you're a foreigner, you couldn't get to the top. You were told you will not be allowed to get to the top, to a country where I believe now is a true meritocracy, where there's opportunity for all, regardless of race or religion or background. And I've seen this unfold in front of my eyes. I think it's the most amazing country, and I think immigration, good immigration, has been fantastic for this country. And a lot of the immigrants that have come here have done it with nothing. I mean, this year we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Uganda nations, who were thrown out by a brutal dictator, Idi Amin, 40 years ago. Look at what that community has achieved over here.
But the question is Britain no longer British? How would you answer that?
And then you talk about the fact that in London now, less than 50% of Londoners are originally of ethnic origin from here. But that is wonderful, and I think it's the most cosmopolitan city in the world. And if you ask me my identity, I'm really proud to be Indian. I'm really proud to be a Zoroastrian Parsi. I'm really proud to be Asian, and most of all, I'm really, really proud to be British and what this country stands for.
All right, well, Peter Hitchens, you were touching on this before, but what's your view?
Well, immigration on this scale is unprecedented in the history of this country. There has been nothing like it. And the problem with immigration on this scale is that, of course, immigrants can come here and become British if they're given the chance to do so. If the society which welcomes them says, you're very welcome here, but what we want you to do is integrate and become part of our country. Far from doing that, it's been the policy of our governments for many years to encourage multiculturalism and the creation of solitudes in which people have nothing to do with each other and live apart. And there has been that, and there has also been the fact the sheer scale of this means that there are now, I think, millions of homes. I'm sure factcheck.com or whoever they are will tell us how many millions quickly, where there are no adults who speak English. You cannot be a society unless everybody in that society shares certain things in common. One of them is language, one of them is law, one of them you might say would be a sense of humour. All kinds of things come together to make people what they are. We are considerably less British, and that's the idea. Because when New Labour launched this mass immigration policy, which they did as a deliberate act of policy, this is the account of a New Labour apparatchik, Andrew Nether, who actually said that the policy included a driving political purpose, that mass immigration was the way that the government was going to make the UK truly multicultural, and that the main purpose was to rub the right's nose in diversity and render their arguments out of date. That has been achieved. That was a driving political purpose to change this country irreversibly and out of all recognition. It's been achieved, and that lot did it. And now they're going for the next election to pose as the friends of those who are worried by it, but they aren't. They're fat bourgeois bohemians who enjoy all the parts of mass immigration, the cheap nannies and the cheap restaurants which they so love. They don't care about anybody else or what happens to the rest of the country.
Stella Creasy.
Easy, Peter. Easy. Listen, the reason I might be fat is because I went to 80 street parties during the Jubilee in my local community. I ate hundreds of pieces of cake My local community is exactly the sort of place that Peter is talking about, that he seems a little bit frightened of. I'd love to invite you to come down and meet Walthamstow. You get a very warm welcome there, because we welcome people in Walthamstow. That's what Walthamstow originally meant in the Doomsday Book.
So kind of you.
We had... Well, Peter, this is the thing, you see. Britishness for me is about a series of values.
I can travel around my own country quite freely, thanks, without being...
No. I'm offering to welcome you to a place to come and see the kinds of things that we're talking about this evening, because we have a very diverse community in Walthamstow. Don't get me wrong, we have challenges that we have to face, but we also have a strength that comes from that diversity, because the same people who are organising all those fantastic street parties were also out there cheering on people like Mo Farah, who they saw as a classic example of what Britishness could and stands for.
What do you mean? What does it stand for you? Because that was the question. Is Britain no longer British? What does British mean to you?
I look at Mo Farah and he makes me proud, because he's a man who worked really, really hard to rise to attention.
What does
he embodies that sense of fair play, of hard work, of tolerance and commitment to each other, and that's what we saw during the Olympics. That's what we deal with every single day in Walthamstow, because people who come from many different backgrounds share a shared concern. And Peter, you would love them, because they all get angry as soon as you talk about having a controlled parking zone. So there's plenty of things that people can find in common wherever they come from.
All right, the person who asked the question, the back there, yes.
I don't think you can define Britishness, because it means different things to different people. I think immigration is a fantastic thing and enriches the fabric of this society.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have had huge uncontrolled mass immigration over the last decade, and I think the census really showed just how big it's been. Pretty much a city the size of Birmingham, in terms of the extra population that came in. Nevertheless, I think, you know, you look at the Olympics, I'm a London MP, the volunteers were from the whole of London, they were fantastic. That is London today, and actually this is Britain today. And I think the key to success is making the best of the people that we've got and making the most of the fact that, yes, we are a diverse nation, we are diverse communities, mine certainly is, and I think we've got to make that our asset in the future. And I think that we can have a big debate about whether Labour's policy on immigration was good or bad. I happen to think it was bad. I think it was bad to just allow uncontrolled numbers of people to come into the country without having a strategy for how public services would cope with them, how housing would cope with them. But the bottom line is, we are Britain today, and I think we've got to make the best of that. And I think, as the gentleman said, it means different things to different people, but I think there are some core values there of fair play, of creativity, of a fantastic sense of humour, of competitiveness, of being entrepreneurs. And I think we've been at our best when we've been not just strong at home, but when we've been out there helping to shape the world around us too. And I think that's what we need to continue doing as a country.
But why does your government have this immigration cap? I mean, to have a crude instrument like a cap, when you just implement that, you're deterring the good immigration, the people who are coming into this country that have enriched this country, as the gentleman there said. With an immigration cap, you're turning people away. Look at the way with students, with the UK Border Agency. The UK Border Agency, if I challenge them, they wouldn't even be able to tell you how many illegal immigrants are in this country, rounded up to 100,000. And yet London Metropolitan University, in one swoop, they tell the 2,500 foreign students that are there, go and find another place within 60 days.
Well,
is that a fair way of dealing with people?
I can maybe...
The message that sends out to the rest of the world is Britain doesn't want foreign students, and if you come to this country, you don't know if you're going to finish your studies or not. Is that right?
Absolutely not the case. There is no limit on the numbers of students that can come to the UK if they have English, if they've got the funds for their course, and if they're signed up to a proper degree. So really, that is simply not reflecting the reality.
Why do you include student numbers and immigration numbers?
Right.
Why do you include student numbers?
Leave that argument for a minute.
You have to have. I mean, I think it's common sense to have some kind of a cap on migration. I think most people in Britain would recognise
Let me bring in the man who's been
none.
sitting patiently with his hand in the air there. And probably...
Thank you ever so much.
Yes.
Isn't the problem not necessarily the people we have coming into this country who want to be British, but more so the people that are already born in this country who decide that actually they're not British, but they're just English? I'm very fortunate because I have a grandmother who is Scottish and a great-grandmother who is Welsh, and I was born here in Bristol. So I consider myself to be fundamentally British, except for the Irish, but we're working on that. Perhaps soon. But the problem is that we have people now who fundamentally just say that they're English.
Who are these people you're thinking of?
Well, I have many friends who just say, oh, I'm English, and you see in Scotland you want Alex Salmond having an independent Scotland, so I think it's not necessarily...
You'd like people to feel British, not
I think
English,
Britishness is
not
an
Welsh.
important thing, because, well, you should be Welsh and British.
All right, OK. All right. And you, sir, in the front row here.
I believe that the people in Britain is what makes Britain Britain. I mean, you've got all these diverse communities. Well, there's loads of them around Britain, and all coming together to be British is what makes Britain Britain. I mean, if you think about it, it's like, for example, my granddad, he's Hungarian, and back in the day, I'm not sure how many years ago, but he ran his own hot dog stand in Bristol, and he is part of British. Okay. He's like kind of putting British history. All right. In a set of views, that's what we kind of make it coming from.
That's well made. Will Self, almost 3 million more foreign residents since 2001. Was the question, is Britain no longer British?
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, people have said Britain has many different meanings to different people. I think really up to the Suez Crisis in 1952, the court... Sorry, 56? No.
56.
56, up to 56. Of course you do, you probably were in the front line. Thank you for the on-the-spot fact-checking, Peter. I think more or less up to that point, most people's conception of what being British involved was basically going overseas and subjugating black and brown people and taking their stuff and the fruits of their labours. That was a core part of British identity, was the British Empire. Now, various members of the political class have tried to revive that idea quite recently without much success. So if we're talking about what an integral conception of Britishness is, it's actually quite antithetical to the idea of a multicultural nation. It's in favour of a multicultural empire, which is quite a different thing. And addressing the young man there who's concerned about our relationship with Scotland and Wales and Ireland, who were often employed as the shock troops of the British Empire to go in and appropriate this stuff. So if your idea of Britain is the British Empire, then this is no longer that, quite clearly. That's my answer.
And the scale of immigration revealed by the census.
Well, I think it's a bit like, weirdly enough, I think it's a bit like the issue of gay marriage, in that the people who line up on the opposition to immigration line of the argument are usually racists.
See, here
they normally have an antipathy to people, particularly with black and brown skins. That's normally the case. You've had your crack, Peter.
The bigoted defamation of an opposite opinion, rather than a willingness to listen to it or
soon be invading Hitchin.
Liberal bigotry is the worst of all because it thinks it's so enlightened.
The man up there...
I'm just making a point, not a point of fact. It can probably be fact-checked.
We've been round this ground. We've been round this ground, I feel. Yes, you say, Inspector.
I think it's easy to complain about the level of immigration, but I'd agree with the gentleman in the front row that I think it's part of our island culture. And I wonder if we'd ever built the motorway network without the help of the Irish, or won the Battle of Britain without the help of the Polish airmen.
OK. Let's move on. Sue Taylor, please.
Is it fair to vilify the 2 Australian DJs for the unintended tragic consequences of their hoax phone call?
All right, let's just deal with it. Is it fair to vilify the 2 Australian DJs for their hoax phone call and the consequences of it? Justin Greening.
I think what they did was hugely irresponsible. I think having said that nobody really could have predicted what tragic outcome would have resulted from their prank. And I think the reality, it was an Australian talk show and radio show. If it hadn't been reported so widely over in the UK, I don't know whether the nurse would have been quite so aware of the story itself. But I think it's incredibly tragic. I think everybody involved is obviously gutted. And I think really the most important thing right now is that her family is allowed some privacy, frankly, to get on with what has been a huge personal tragedy for them. And I think the media circus around it really needs to stop now, and we need to allow them to come to terms with what has happened, which has been absolutely horrible.
Stella Creasy.
I'm really sorry, but I feel so uncomfortable about us having this as a conversation, because all I think of is that there's a family that's lost its mum 10 days or so before Christmas. The last thing they need is us speculating about what happened or talking about it on public TV. I'm really sorry, David, but I just feel if we really believe, as Justine says, that they need some privacy, then actually they need people not to be speculating about this stuff in public. I don't want to talk about it. I'm sorry. I feel so sorry for it.
Yes.
I believe there's probably more than one cause of this suicide, and this will come out eventually. I think the part that the Samaritans have to play in preventing suicide needs greater publicity.
Just to clarify, the question Sue Taylor asked is not about Jacinta Saldana. It's about the attack on the two DJs for what began as a prank. That's the
I think
point.
where it went wrong, it wasn't in actually sort of making the phone call, but subsequently the